Yes, the topic is toxic religion. This is actually one of the chapters from Living Wisdom, and toxic religion is not toxic Christianity. So I must add, because there's nothing toxic in Christianity, only in religion or religious thinking. Yeah, so I just want to quickly read a small portion of something that Jesus did in John chapter 2, and that was the time when he went to the temple and he actually did a bit of confrontation. So it's a really familiar story, but I want to lay it out first so you understand why I'm talking about this. John chapter 2 in verse 13 to 18, it was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration, so Jesus went to Jerusalem. In the temple area, he saw merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves for sacrifices, and he also saw dealers at tables exchanging foreign money. Jesus made a whip out of some ropes and chased them all out of the temple. He drove them out, and he drove out the sheep and cattle and scattered the money exchangers' coins over the floor, and he turned over their tables. Then going over to the people who sold the doves, he told them, "Get these things out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." Then his disciples remembered the prophecy from scriptures, "Passion for God's house will consume me." But the Jewish leaders demanded, "What are you doing? If God gave you authority to do this, show us a miraculous sign to prove it." I just want to explain it in a very easy term, is that Jesus didn't go there to mess things up. Jesus went there to make things right. But to a lot of people, it's really confrontational, it's really strong, it's too much. And remember, he wasn't against the church. He wasn't against the temple. He did it because he loved the church, right? But the religious leaders said, "So what are you doing? Why are you turning the table around and turning the tables over? What's going on here?" Imagine the Pharisees, right? The dealers and the money exchangers were there because they were allowed to be there. So the Pharisees actually wanted them to be there. And the Pharisees actually said that, well, if you really want to help, just do some spiritual things to encourage us. But don't mess things up because this is our setup here. So remember, once again, Jesus wasn't against the church. He actually set such an affection and excitement for the house of God. But it is the people, it is the religious leaders actually. It's almost like sometimes we do see settings like that in our churches today. Leaders set up their stuff and they say, well, this is how it is. Don't rock the boat. Don't mess things up. This is the setup, okay? You can come and do something to encourage us, but don't muck up everything, okay? First of all, I just want to be clear, we love the church, all right? And this is not a message that we want to trash the church or church leaders or anything like that. It's nothing like that. We are not against the church. Being organized is great. I love it. Having bylaws to safeguard the church is great. Healthy church leadership or people's regular commitment to serve, to do outreach, evangelical fire, Pentecostal experiences, our love and dedication for scriptures. Nothing is wrong with that, okay? We love it. Being generous for the work of the ministry, the need to fund the compassionate work of the Lord, we are all for that. However, this talk is aimed to encourage God's people to put on the sound mind of Christ, not to abandon their ability to process, reason, ask questions for clarity, and decide for themselves. Because a lot of people don't, self-included when I was young. If we can all put on the sound mind of Christ and to think through things, then we don't need to become disheartened or discouraged after joining a church. Because a lot of people, they come broken and they got saved and then they become more problematic after joining the wrong church. So we don't want that. Once we join the church, we've seen people encounter rigid teaching or wooden practices in the house of the Lord, okay? And the house of God is supposed to be a sanctuary, a safe place, a healing place for all nations. And somehow the church is the place where we receive stiff teachings or religious teachings. But I think it will only damage you if you internalize it, but it won't damage you if you recognize it and don't buy into it. Right? So I want to talk about that. And because we don't want to be so confused, because we found that people get so confused about the character of God by going to a wrong church. They become confused about the nature of God. They might still serve, but then they stop growing personally, interpersonally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially because they stop exercising sound judgment and critical thinking. So we grow by the renewing of our minds, not by the removal of our minds. So I've got 20, so I'll just go through 10. So there are 10 toxic religious teachings that we have to be aware of, and don't let them hurt you. So that you can keep your passion for the house of the Lord. We all need to keep the zeal for God's house. And I want you guys to have double of that excitement, that affection, that love for the house of God that should never leave us. All right? So number one is called spiritual. It is what it is. Another word is spiritual abdication. This is a condition David actually called it baptized fatalism. So fatalists are not enthusiasts, because the word enthusiasm means to be filled with God. The idea that everything is happened is ordained by God is simply not right and not true. And a lot of people think that everything in my life is all ordained by God because I'm a Christian. The mindset ignores our responsibility to plan our lives, make good choices, and be sensible, and challenge the status quo when needed. So we found that people are totally okay with closed door, open door guidance. You know, what does that mean? It means like, oh, well, I want to find a job, but if the door's closed, oh, maybe the good Lord doesn't want me to find a job.